This is the Team Objection Podcast for January 16th, 2024, episode 606. I'm not in my seat yet. I will be in a minute. Dave's camera is frozen again. God knows why, but Sean is here.
I was about to jump into the intro, and I was like, wait, he probably, because he didn't say anything, he probably has it covered, so I won't do it. But I was getting ready. I was just going to launch in.
He was totally ready, and also my image on camera right now is projecting what I'm feeling right now because I consistently just can't get anything right and ruin everything on this show. That's what I feel. Is that true?
Maybe.
I don't know. Sorry, I got an email.
Oh, yeah, that's it, Sean. So everything's more important than the show right now, Sean. Take your email.
No, there is nothing else, actually, because I love this episode. And I was actually going to tell you, Dave, this is a good episode for you to go back and guard the base, kind of thing. Although you've actually played some games this year for once.
I have multiple games on that came out in 2023 that I can comment and rank. Multiple.
I feel like you barely reach the definition of multiple, but you're technically correct.
The best kind of correct.
Yeah. So
for the people who are watching on video and wondering what the hell is going on, I mean, essentially, again, the Dave thing is a mystery. Me, I might be doing the show from in there in the future, or maybe Cody will be in there, half producing, half on the show. We're working on it, but I can now have multiple mics in at the same time, so that's why that microphone was on, and this microphone is on, and we're working on it. But it's also because it's a pain in the ass trying to move everything out here. I can't use the mouse on my leg. It's just a whole thing. God forbid when we run a game show, because there's no way in hell that mouse is going to work for that, because it'd be like, all right, you get 10 points, and it's 20 minutes later and we get one round done.
We're transitioning. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know what, though? So last week we talked about, so this is part 2 of our Best of 2023. Last week we covered movies and TV. Dave had a surprising amount of stuff to say. I was very proud of him. Now we're on the game section. We talked about splitting this into a trilogy, and we thought better of it. And in part, I think it's good, Chris, because if we make it a trilogy this year, I'm just going to push for 4 episodes next year, 5 episodes the next year.
Right.
So let's just cap it out at 2, and I think it's going to be better for everybody.
I don't think we're going to need more episodes for this year, but we'll see. We'll see. This year doesn't feel like it's going to be as good.
That's what everybody wants in Star Wars too. More content, more of the same thing that we liked the first time through. No, that's not how that works.
Yeah, right.
You got to know your limits.
Yeah. But we might as well jump into it. We've been saving this for a while. This is also going to be our opportunity to essentially review a couple of the biggest titles of the year. They will probably not be a surprise if you've been following the show regularly, because we've mentioned them offhand in a half dozen episodes or more. But this is going to be our chance to talk about them at length. So we're going to fly through some things, especially if there's no overlap. But there's a couple in particular that we're going to be giving basically the review treatment to here because they deserve it. They're probably Game of the Year contenders.
And I think just as we hit them in the list, we'll be like, boo, boo, boo. We'll do like a sound effect. You'll love this, Chris. I'm going to cue you for a really elaborate sound effect.
Yeah.
Boo, 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 when we hit one of the games we're going to be reviewing. But what's so sad is Dave's probably laughing his ass off right now, and we just can't see it because of his camera.
I can promise you I'm not. I can absolutely promise you I'm not.
Mm-hmm. He's ashamed. And what's nice is you would think I pulled a picture of Dave or did a screen grab or something, but that's just how it happened to freeze. So,
which is so sad. It's so consistent that we were able to plan for this. Right. This is what kind of problem we're dealing with.
Doug says Dave needs me to work on his computer again. Yeah, I mean, look, I know Dave doesn't have a whole lot of need for a standard computer, but if he wants to stay on this podcast, we might need to figure it out.
I really can't imagine how it's my computer. It just doesn't make any sense.
I also heard you say, Chris, that Dave doesn't have a lot of standards, which is also true.
Wow.
But so who should start?
Well, this is my list.
It is.
It's pretty much as much your list, but the difference is I keep pace with you here, whereas nobody really keeps pace with you on movies or anything, for example.
That's true.
You have played more than I did. That's pretty much the case every year, but I even went 10 deep. This is usually a top 5. I went 10 deep. You went 15, and because you flew through some of your lower items last week, I will allow you to do that.
I got the okay.
Yes.
I got cleared.
Now, if you have 20 honorable mentions before those 15, then we might have a fist fight. But
I don't have any honorable mentions. I only have what didn't qualify. I have certain rules, and I'll go over the rules when it's my turn.
So okay, I get it. You don't have honorable mentions, but you have things that didn't qualify but came really close, and you'd like to make sure that they get mentioned in a honorable way.
Dave, what's funny is that's not the case, but that would have been the case if I was not allowed 15. I would have been like, okay, in the not honorable mention, not 15, but just happened to be the 15th best game I played, incidentally.
So I figured we would just
You're
save
so
time.
damn predictable.
Yeah, let's not even run the bit. Let's just
Exactly.
have them have the list, and we'll actually save time that way.
Yeah.
So traditionally, I do this with a top 5, and then also 5 honorable mentions and 5 dishonorable mentions. This year it's a top 10, but I kept the mentions the same. So let's start with dishonorable mentions, although it should be pointed out, I was reading this as I was doing research just to make sure I wasn't missing any games. There were 25 games with a meta rating of 90 or higher on Metacritic this year. That's the highest since 2004. So look, Metacritic has its flaws, has its issues, no question. I mean, we all get it. But it also serves as a comparison between year to year. So if nothing else, by that flawed metric, this was an absolutely massive year, and it passes the eye test.
How many times have we used the phrase, this could have been, X could have been the game of the year in a different year, but not this year.
I have 2 games in my honorable mention that got game of the year contention. Not serious, but still. Dishonorable mention. Let's start with 2 IPs that should not have been milked but were. And look, it's not unusual for somebody to take a big franchise and then try and make some kind of shovelware game out of it to make a quick buck. But 2 this year in particular really stood out for being fucking terrible. And that's the Lord of the Rings Gollum and the Walking Dead Destinies.
Golems. Laugh Goldmine, though, for what that's worth.
I can't. Destinies is bad enough, but at least that looked half-assed from the beginning. The idea behind Gollum seemed solid, and then it's like, how did this get gold? How did the publishers look at it and go, "Yep, that's ready to ship"?
Did you watch any of the playthroughs at all?
I've seen like clips and gifs and stuff. I can't say I've seen anything extended because why? But I'm familiar.
Dave, this is the game where Gollum like jumps and just like drops dead. There's no one knows why. They're just like, what happened?
Just neck breaks.
What? Okay.
It's just full of so many bugs and glitches. The game doesn't know when you're alive or dead or succeeding or failing or really gameplay of any kind. It's just terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything more frustrating than games that are shipped with bugs and glitches? Like, and you know, sometimes they're funny, but if it's broken, it's like, just, forget it. Just let's go home.
It feels impossible to avoid it. I mean, even something like Baldur's Gate, which I'm sure is not going to come up later, was in early access for a couple years before it came out in the full release and still had a bunch of hot fixes within a week, right? Like, some of them are inevitable as big as games have gotten scope-wise, but this wasn't just bugs and glitches. This was an unplayable mess.
Yeah, like at one point is almost like illegal, like just like theft. There's a promise you make with the gamer when you make a game is that your game will be playable mechanically. And that wasn't the case here. So, like, they just released it to try to, I guess, make any money they could, although they had to give a bunch of refunds anyway. So, I don't know what the plan was.
I don't either. But it's okay, because they're in dishonorable mention. Peter mentions Rise of Kong. Skull Island could definitely have been in dishonorable mention. I didn't feel like it was worth my time to even put it there. But you're right. Also, another really bad example. And I know you're being sarcastic. But one other big release that is going to make it in dishonorable mention is Starfield. Now, this might seem unfair because for some people, especially like the really, really faithful to everything that they do, that might be like, well, that's not. It's a good game. How good it was, how much it met expectations, how much it actually feels like a 2023 title is up for debate. But, reasonable people can agree this isn't terrible, and that's fine. But I played about 10 hours of Starfield, and I felt nothing. And I feel like that's pretty remarkable because a lot of times, even if I'm playing something that's bad or ho-hum, I still like, oh, that was cool at least, or this is fun even though it's flawed. And I didn't really have anything in Starfield. I just felt dead inside the time I spent with it.
Well, this kind of... This is one of the ones I kind of want to do a quick review on. Although Starfield almost doesn't even warrant it. But I'll just jump in and say, yeah, I mean, it's exactly it. It just was not good. It didn't... Chris, I'm playing the game, and I don't know if you experienced this too. It's supposed to be like this expansive exploration game. It's just menu-based. Yep. The entire thing is menu-based. From when you get in the ship, you go to another planet, you land on the planet, you're just in menus the whole time.
Yep. And the developers are clearly out of touch.
Yeah, I would figure that if you aren't feeling the compelled nature to go back and finish playing the game or continue playing the game, that's a really bad sign for the game.
Well, like the gameplay is like Fallout 3, Dave, but worse, more annoying with a bad story, and like it came out in the same like year. So if it came out in Fallout 3 was 2000 fucking 6 or 7.
Yeah.
It
Somewhere
feels
around
like
there.
that, but released now, and the story, but like with a worse story, with less impactful choices, worse companions. Everything is worse. It was not good, and it did not grab me either. And I tried, and I'm still gonna try.
Because you're hard-headed about it, damn it.
I'm gonna try.
And I may eventually, because again, it wasn't like it was awful, but it's just I don't understand. And I wanted to make sure I quoted this verbatim. This was some of the people that were with Bethesda apparently started responding to comments, like user reviews, especially negative ones.
It's classy. Always
and
good.
If you didn't see this, I'm just going to read this one paragraph of this. It's a nightmare, but some of Starfield's planets are meant to be empty by design, but that's not boring. They're telling them it's not boring.
Right.
When the astronauts went to the moon, there was nothing there. They certainly weren't bored.
Such a good point.
And you're like, it's like, well, that was real life. That was the first time it had ever been done. That was, a monumental moment in human history. And this is a video game where anything is possible, and you went the most boring route possible.
I think they lost me on I have to manage my oxygen. And I don't know. Maybe that won't be a big point, Chris. I think you're further in the game than I am. But that's like a big no for me, is to manage my fucking oxygen levels on a planet.
Well,
really did not like that.
Fallout. But yeah, it's like playing Fallout, and it's like, do I want to do survival mode where I have to make sure I eat and sleep and drink water that isn't radioactive, or do I actually just want to play it like through an adventure? I don't want to manage eating. I'll do that in real life.
Yeah. Yeah, and people in the comments, especially Jason, are talking about, like, we knew there was going to be issues. Jason's a big Star Citizen backer. I will say, depending on where Star Citizen goes in the next 4 to 5 years, that could be an even more cautionary tale, but we'll see. We'll see. The point is, like, there's a reason why that development has taken so long. Starfield feels like a 2012 game, but it came out in 2023.
Yeah.
And that's pretty remarkable. I got off my list. Oh, God, what am I going to do?
You're going to have to vamp.
Dishonorable mention to Tales of Symphonia Remastered. At this point, the Tales series at least had some success with Arise, which was nice because we had been floundering a little bit. Berseria was fine. Zestiria was blech. So, like, it's been a little while since we've really been happy with the Tales series, and I was once as big a fan as anybody. The Remastered is barely any work. It just felt half-assed and lazy. Can't even get 60 frames per second on a GameCube game in 2023. So why? Why are we even wasting our time? Bring back Tales of the Abyss, which is stuck on fucking PS2 and the DS. Like, put a little bit of work into it and make the re-releases happen, or don't bother. Just let them fade away into obscurity.
Yeah, Grand Theft Auto, same thing. We're getting more. So a lot of fans, there's a lot of pushback from like this like remake, remaster culture, which I'm fine with, except in these cases where it is clearly just a cash grab. No effort was put in. It's like, come on.
I have 3 remakes in my top 10.
I can be okay with remakes. I can really be okay with remakes in the sense of, hey, that a new generation of gamers is out. Maybe they, haven't had the opportunity. They don't own the system, so we need to give them the opportunity. It's just when they charge full price for a game that's remade, that's where I guess have an issue.
Yeah.
Yep. And then I don't want to talk about this yet, so we'll save this for Sean's list. But my final dishonorable mention is The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. We're not going to beer it. We're not going to beer it. We're going to save it for the end. So stay tuned, because if you're one of those people that's like, what? You shouldn't be surprised, given the way I've talked about this the last 3 months or so. But we'll get to it later, because this is not the time.
We're going to have a fight on our hands, Dave. Although, weirdly, Dave liked it more than anybody. So it's going to be real interesting when we get there. But, okay.
Honorable mention, Crab Champions. Not because it's really that good, but because it was fun. It's on early access on Steam. It's a roguelike, but when you're a crab with a gun, and you just fight increasing waves of other like nautical-related enemies, and it's got 4-player co-op, so it just becomes this hectic mess of bullet hell, but you're all playing together, and you're crabs.
You sold me in like 5 words. It's like roguelike, crabs, guns. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm interested.
It's a simple concept.
What more do I need?
It's bright, it's colorful, it's been updated to the point where the balance is really good now. And again, you can play with friends, and that's the best way to do it. You can do it solo, but a lot more fun to play with friends and try and take on these endless waves of other crabs and other bigger enemies, pufferfish, whatever. So it's in the bottom of honorable mention, but it's one of the games I had fun playing this year. And you know what I didn't have fun playing? Starfield. Fire Emblem Engage ends up in honorable mention. We reviewed it in a full episode. We won't talk about it much here. I think we both gave it like a 7-8-ish kind of score. It was good. It's Fire Emblem. We like Fire Emblem. Was it great? No. Can you afford to not be great and make a list in 2023? No.
No.
I put Alan Wake 2 in my honorable mention because I am going to play it. but I haven't had a chance to get to it because there were so many games in 2023. But it feels like if there was ever a game that was not going to be our number one, which we will get to, it was this. So I feel like I need to at least put it out there. I'm sure Sean will talk about it. So we'll save it for later.
So good. I can't wait for you to play it.
Hi-Fi Rush was a sleeper for me this year, and I think a lot of people. In general, I've kind of fallen off the rhythm game bandwagon, except for Rock Band, which I still play on occasion. But the fact that this was really more action than rhythm, but it incorporated both into this really pleasing package. In general, I want to support studios that don't have the same pedigree these days. I want to support off-the-wall titles, unique titles that aren't sequels. So I want to put Hi-Fi Rush in there, even though it didn't make my top 10. But nobody else played it, so it's fine. And the final honorable mention is Final Fantasy 16. Because I can't put it in dishonorable mention. I've liked parts of it quite a bit, but it's also a 60-hour game that should have been half of that. And I don't even think that's an exaggeration. The amount of... It's like, we know that some of the team from 14 overlapped with 16. In some ways this worked, like Soken's work on the soundtrack was really good. In some ways it didn't, like annoying fetch quests when your character is literally the most important person on the planet. You just cannot justify it. So when it works, I mean, some of the crescendos in this game, some of the big action sequences, the boss fights, and just some cutscenes are stellar. They're really well done, and you're engrossed, and it's engaging, and everything's great. And then you take a 10-hour cooldown after you get some of those moments to go around and do stupid errands for people. And yes, a lot of video games have this, but 16 is guilty of it more than most.
Yeah. We'll get to it more. This is a review. Oh my God, review, but for later.
Top 10. And we'll go quick through the first 5, and I'll talk more about the other 5 after that. 10, 9, and 8 are all remakes. I decided just to lump them all together, but also because I don't think any of them stuck out above other new releases from the year. So number 10 is Metroid Prime Remastered, number 9 is Star Ocean The Second Story R, and number 8 is Super Mario RPG. Metroid Prime, we don't need to spend a lot of time talking about because...
It's the Citizen Kane of gaming.
It's the Citizen Kane of gaming, and now it's better. If nothing else, just having the 2 analog stick support so you can move around more freely instead of the weird lock-on system you had to do in the original game on the GameCube is almost enough on its own, but you also have obviously a huge graphical update and a bunch of other smaller settings you can tweak to your liking. Some of those are just for like graphics, audio, some of those are accessibility. There's one where it's like if you are running around for 10 or 15 minutes and you have no idea what you're doing, you can make it so they give you objective hints, after some time has passed. Again, we're looking for a certain threshold. I'm all for remakes, but at least put in some work. They put in the work. Number 9.
That's a nice thing. Yeah, quality of life, man. That's all comment. It's like when you do a remake, make quality of life better. Don't make it harder to play.
No, and we're expecting, if you're not going to update the graphics with a whole new look, which, both of my next 2 did, and I guess technically Metroid Prime did too. I mean, it upscaled everything. But if you're not going to give them a whole new look, it better run more smoothly. It better run more responsively. And in Metroid Prime Remastered, one of the other biggest things was there's no more load times stuck behind doors. There were times in the original where you'd shoot a door and it'd be like, thinking about opening it because it was loading behind it. No more.
The dual analog is the biggest, by far the biggest deal of that.
That just feels so much better. Star Ocean, I won't talk a ton about because neither of you have, I think, ever played any Star Ocean game. Maybe you have, Sean, but if you did, you played the bad ones and not this one.
Yeah.
This is the best Star Ocean game. It isn't especially close, but this is what I want more remakes to do. What they've done is they've made these gorgeous new backgrounds, but they've kept the sprites from the original. So now you feel like this whole fresh, new, beautiful looking world, but it still captures the charm of the original because it's got that sprite stuff. It looks the same, but different. And again, a lot of just quality of life upgrades, modern upgrades, things that you expect from an RPG in 2023 that you didn't have 20 years ago. So it succeeds on almost every level. And then the pinnacle of the 3 is Mario RPG, which didn't really reinvent a ton. There's some new triple attacks. There's some new post-game boss fights. There's some new material in it, but it stayed true to the original style with the isometric kind of 2.5 diagonal type view. And I'm a little surprised it even happened, just given that, Nintendo's relationship with Square Enix is not what it was when this game came out 25 years ago.
Yeah, it was good. I never played it. I was surprised at what I felt like was a roller coaster of quality, sort of. So the beginning was very good. I didn't know how quirky it was going to be throughout the entire thing. When I watched my friend play it years ago, I guess I was just seeing on kind of the serious moments. But yeah, it's very quirky. And then you'll get like a really good boss fight, but then there's a part where you go into the Star Mountains and you just like get the star. There's like no boss fight, there's no anything. You just like, here you go. Inconsistent, but this fun. And I was so glad I finally got to actually play it.
Yeah.
Isn't that the fun part about remakes is that you see the writing and kind of game structure that existed in the past, but under shiny new filters now, and you can see like, okay, here's where we've improved a little bit in some ways when it comes to the structure of games. Although I will say Mario RPG is still one of my favorites of all time, so I am looking forward to replaying this. I haven't done it yet, but I look forward to doing it.
Yeah, it was fun to get back into it again. Just nice upgraded graphics. Everything feels a little better, a little more responsive. Like as Sean said, it is definitely up and down. The pacing's not bad. It's just weird in spots.
Because the whole game is not that long anyway.
No, like 12 to 15 hours for most people, and especially if you know what you're doing. I think I beat it in like 11, but I've played it 3 or 4 times now. So, I mean, a lot of it's just you have to give it some credit for what it did then. Maybe some elements don't hold up well now, but what it did back then, like, damn.
Yeah.
Some of those things just were not done. Bowser joins your party. Spoiler.
Yeah.
Like, what is Bowser doing in the party? And Princess. Now Peach is everywhere, but back then, pretty new.
It's probably one of the first times you played as Peach. One of the first.
Not
Mario 2 withstanding. Yeah.
But is Mario 2's Princess even Peach?
Yeah, well, exactly.
A question for the future.
It was Toadstool at the time.
Right. Which I guess she technically was in the original, too. The remake actually calls her Peach, but she was called Toadstool back in the first version of this on the Super Nintendo.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Fun fact. They didn't change almost anything about the translation, but that was one thing they did update. I guess it makes sense. Nobody really calls her Toadstool anymore.
Gino's still as cool as he was back then, for what it's worth. Like, bring back Gino. Justice for Gino. What the hell?
Mm-hmm.
Gino and Smash should have happened.
Doug mentions like Smash probably did a lot of work repairing the relationship with Nintendo and Square, and it's like, yeah, and Smash laid the groundwork for a lot of other collabs too. I mean, some companies we never thought would get back in bed with Nintendo. Who knows what that could mean down the road, but... Number 7's an oddball because I haven't played it yet. And you're like, what the hell are you doing putting a game that you haven't played in your top 10? And
so many games.
Stacked? And the answer is because it's 30XX. And I have zero doubts in my mind whatsoever that I'm going to enjoy it. Here's the thing. It came out right when Baldur's Gate 3 came out. I didn't even realize it had been released. I had been waiting and waiting and waiting for months and months and months, and it came out on the Switch in September, supposedly.
It came out. It did? Finally?
Supposedly. I haven't even been able to check. I found that as I was looking, but it had a release date for the Switch, September 8th.
I'm gonna have to do like a weird caveat because if it actually did come out, like it would be on my list somewhere. But I played it in beta like 1 or 2 years ago, so I had no idea.
So I haven't even had a chance to look into that's true. So it could be the most flawed pick of all time, but I don't care because one way or another is going to get represented, and I love 20XX, and this is supposed to be even better from people who have played the early access, from the reviewers I saw. Like, everything about it's just a little bit better than the first, so that's good enough for me.
Yeah, it can't be a flawed pick because it's a great game.
Yeah.
And it almost, it follows a lot more of like Mega Man, to where you like select your different places, and it from the graphic updates to the gameplay, they really like perfected it. It's awesome. I don't know if I like it more than 20XX, but it's a worthy successor.
It feels like you and I should play this for the channel, for what it's worth.
I love it. Yeah.
I'm seeing this as $20 on the Nintendo site right now to download. So it looks like you are correct.
After the show.
And look, 2023 was so stacked, especially the fall area, because of this, because of Starfield, Alan Wake, blah, 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 blah. The 2 Mario games. Like, I'm sort of shocked that a game that I love enough to put this high, I didn't realize had come out, but that's how stacked the year was.
And it also is what a bad marketing job that they did.
Also true.
It's fair. Yes.
It was supposed to come out years ago, and it's just been stuck in fucking beta forever. So, what good news. Yeah, I'm so happy now.
We had something to look forward to.
Man.
Yeah.
We'll also put in our list for
Sean's
2024.
year is made.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're already the years looking up. Number 6. Which one did I put 6 and which one was 5? I don't want to fuck this up. Right, I didn't put that because, okay, perfect. Number 6 is Honkai Star Rail. I won't spend a ton of time on it because neither of you will ever play this game, just like you wouldn't ever play Genshin. But effectively, it's the same developers. Genshin. But if Dave was going to play one, this would be a better fit for him because it's turn-based with interruption mechanics. And we all love those where you have like a turn order and you can manipulate it with stuff. So if you like that formula and you like the anime style and stuff like that, then this is a great fit. I kind of like it more than Genshin these days, partly because Genshin fucked me on one character that I liked, so I'm a little bitter. And if you've watched our polling sessions, you know what I'm talking about. But the fact remains that Honkai is a good enough game to stand on its own. Got several nods in a year where, it was more about like ongoing service games where it got its recognition. It certainly wasn't good enough to stand on the tiers of like the best games of the year, but I've been playing it a ton and I enjoy it quite a bit. So it makes number 6. It can't make the top 5 because there's too many good games this year. And now we go into the top 5.
All right, here we go. Serious business.
Number 5 is Sea of Stars. Sea of Stars, if you're not familiar with it, is essentially like the love child of Super Mario RPG and Chrono Trigger. You have some timed battle mechanics. You have that familiar sprite-based art. You've got characters that interact with like enemies in the field and then jump into battle against them, and enemies move around as though it were Chrono Trigger. You've got some dual tech kind of ideas. So there's a lot that has been pulling from both of those games into a story that, while at times is frustrating and at times is a little bit basic, the ancillary characters are all really good. The core 3, 2 of them are boring and one of them is obnoxious. But outside of them, what is happening with everybody else in the world is really interesting. So if you're looking for a 16-bit RPG that scratches all the right itches, that has a really compelling soundtrack, I think you're hard-pressed to do much better than Sea of Stars.
I think this is my only game in the year where I'll concede a game of the year. Game this year. That I'll concede that I didn't give it enough of a shot, because you said it, like, I didn't even get to like a major death that happens fairly early on.
Yeah.
I didn't even get that far. And I was like, it's just not grabbing me. I don't know if it's for me. It sounds like you need to give it a little bit more time.
Yes. And I think you will still enjoy it. I don't think you'll like it as much as I did, but it will be worth your time.
Well, and I keep seeing it. Like, it's showing up on lists all over, and I'm like, okay, I'll admit when I'm wrong.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen a lot. I mean, like, Dave's a co-host, so of course, like, I'm right so often here that I'm not used to admitting when I'm wrong.
I'm just catching strays, and you can't even see my reaction.
I know, it's like the best. It's like
But
my heaven, right?
The reaction is still appropriate. I mean, look at it. Like, Sea of Stars does what Chained Echoes didn't. Chained Echoes last year was another one that had a lot of like, well, it's this indie game that has a lot of like Chrono Trigger in it. Hell, it has a direct reference to the opening scene of Chrono Trigger in it. That game was not as good as this. This is a legitimate Game of the Year candidate. That, while I enjoyed it, was nowhere near as good, quality or quantity-wise. Number 4 is Street Fighter 6. And I was pleasantly surprised to see this reach somewhere around this point on some people's lists. Obviously, given the heavy hitters of this year, I'm not shocked it didn't make anybody's top 3. As much as I like fighting games, it didn't make my top 3. However, considering what a disappointment 5 was, 6 basically corrects all of those in almost every way. It has satisfying single-player modes. It has correct netcode from the word go. But it's also about the little details. You can tell that Capcom brought in people who knew fighting games to help either make this or QC it or whatever the case might be, to promote it. Like their social media campaigns just fit a lot more with the vibe of fighting games. So, little like taunts that characters have that harken back to other games in the series, or the things you find in the World Tour mode, which is the single-player mode, like little items you pick up that harken back to other stuff. Like, just in general, there's a lot of care and love put into this, and it was a complete package from day one. Some people would say, well, it only had like 20 characters. Is that enough? And the answer is, yeah, it's enough. It's a lot of work to make a character.
20 characters.
I know.
That's so many.
I know.
And there's you've talked to me about, like, there's a pretty good, like, dedicated campaign mode.
Yes. Is
so
the story
that's
good?
Cool.
No. The story's not good at all. It's actually kind of bad. It ends on some weird cliffhanger that doesn't make sense. But I still had a blast playing it because it's not about the story at this point. Street Fighter's never really excelled in story. Occasionally we've seen like Injustice dabbled in a few like decent story modes. Dragon Ball kind of does, but it's also cheating because it's pulling from its own material. Like Street Fighter's strength is not its story, but the single player mode's a ton of fun because the game's like, what if you have like Dulcim's limbs, but you can do Zangief's spinning pile drivers and like mix a whole bunch of other special moves in weird and wacky ways? It's a ton of fun and somehow not completely imbalanced.
Great.
So worth checking
out.
I actually think I will. Occasionally fighting games I really like. So Street Fighter has not ever been for me because it's 2D. But it sounds like maybe this could be the one to change that, because I did like the Dragon Ball game pretty well.
And you will like this because of the modern controls, which I don't remember if I talked about in a main episode or on one of the side recordings.
It's like way more accessible.
Yes. And even for me, like, this is the most I've ever played competitive multiplayer, and it was partly because of the modern controls, because I'm a grown-ass man. I'm 38. I'm holding down a job that keeps me busy 65 hours a week. I don't have time to learn one-frame links, which, if you don't even know what those are, don't worry about it. But they're what they sound like. If you don't hit this button in this one frame, the combo drops. I ain't got time for that.
That's stupid. That's
Dave,
stupid.
this might be the biggest thing in life that we relate on is like we can't handle, especially in 2D. Typically, is like quarter circle, full circle, A, B, A.
Yep.
It's
No
like,
more.
It's too much.
I'm always, well, first of all, I'm happy for when games do the past properly to not make it feel like they're throwing you down a nostalgia trip, but making you still feel good about, hey, I remember this. They're doing a good job of incorporating the past, but also making it accessible to new users. So that's always a good way when games can do that. But yeah, when it comes to fighting games, I don't know how you memorize these combos. It makes zero sense to me. I'm sitting here like, button, go. Like, that's all I can do in fighting games.
Well, and Chris, you mentioned like actually even strategically it was a good move because now you can really focus on like the strategy.
Yes.
And not like, oh, am I going to hit the exact button in the right moment? And you can just kind of focus more on like what tactics you want to employ.
Yep. And
That's
I know
cool.
I know fighting games. I'm not like, oh, pat myself in the butt. But like I've been watching and playing fighting games for like 25, 30 years now. I had Street Fighter 2 for Super Nintendo. Like I go back a ways. But I don't have the time for combos anymore either. But now it doesn't matter. Now, if somebody jumps in on me and I'm on the ground waiting for him, I'm uppercutting every time. Because it's just like towards and one, like the special button. It's not a quarter circle, or it's not towards and a quarter circle. It's not like multiple buttons. It can be that simple. You take a damage penalty for it. It's like 20% less damage. But guess what? You can still be completely viable with that because you also get some benefits. For example, I get that uppercut out faster than somebody doing the input. No matter how good they are, they're still doing, towards quarter circle and like 2 or 3 buttons. And I'm doing one button, like one direction and one button. I can do those simultaneously.
Yeah.
So I can uppercut quicker than somebody using the more classic controls. So like they were more controversial at first because especially the competitive scene was like, is this going to ruin it? What we're learning is that maybe the best competitive setting is really good players using modern, but we'll see as the game continues to develop because most players in top 8s at like the big time tournaments are using classic controls still because the damage is just that much more worth it. And not to go super into detail, but the last point of it is like you also don't have all your moves. In modern, you only have about half your moveset because they have to dedicate certain shortcuts too, right?
Yeah.
So you have a good complement of tools, more than enough, but you're just missing certain things. So if you have a good low forward, like a crouching medium kick, well, you may not have that on your character in modern, so it's a trade-off.
It's so cool that they actually balanced it for that. Because I was expecting, like, oh, it's an easier mode. Mm-hmm. You can only do it in the campaign or whatever. The fact that it's viable in a competitive scene, I think that's really impressive.
Because, like, Dragon Ball did it. We played Fighters a bit, and they had, like, a button that you could just hit, like, hit this button over and over again. It does a combo, right? It's like hit, teleport, hit, super.
Yeah.
If you hit that one button over and over again, you could do that one combo. This is a lot more complex and yet simple in a way. It's hard to describe, but you get the idea.
Yep.
So a pleasant return to form. We'll get Akuma here pretty soon. They're going to have more characters throughout the year. We'll see what this game looks like in 3 or 4 years. But all right, top 3, and there's a separation here. As much as I loved Street Fighter 6 and played the hell out of it, I mean, I made gold online, and that's not the highest or anything, but like I fought up several tiers because I love the game so much. Top 3 has separation, and top 3 all has games we need to talk about more in depth. Dave has played 2 of them. No, he hasn't. He's played 1 of them. We're going to recommend the second.
Dave, you suck. Just kidding, you don't.
Number 3 is Super Mario Wonder.
Yes.
I can't put this any higher because the top 2 are some of my favorite games I've ever played. Like, forget this year.
Yeah.
We're talking all-time stuff. But Mario Wonder was just a joy. And it's kind of funny that Nintendo keeps managing to pull this off. It happened with Odyssey for me. It happened in Galaxy. You just have fun. And I know people are like, well, it's on the Switch and you can't do the graphics, this and that. Like, Wonder looks great. Wonder's a really good looking game, and I'm starting to think that as we've reached this threshold where graphics look more and more lifelike, it's going to be more about what you do with an art style and a direction than it is about how photorealistic something can look.
Yeah.
So Super Mario Wonder is beautiful. It's fun to play. For me, my favorite part is that it's always different. Between the Wonder stuff where you might transform into an enemy or the whole stage gets fucked up and convoluted, but just the challenges in general. It's like, all right, here's a level that's like a more traditional level. Here's a challenge using this one badge. Here's like, there's just so much variety they throw at you, but it doesn't feel incohesive. So like in general, I had a really fun time playing it. I just did, and like it deserves to be this high, I think.
I have a really hot take. This might be the most fun I've had in a 2D Mario. I'm not saying it's the best.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of credit that goes to Super Mario 3 and Super Mario World and all
Yeah.
of those. Pure, like, fun. When I try to sell this to Maisie, I say it is like Mario Odyssey or like a more modern Mario game, but condensed into like a 2D form. So you have a little overworld that you go across, and every level you're trying to find those wonder seeds. And my favorite part of the game was I set out to just beat the game. I didn't care about 100%ing, and I ended up getting pretty close to that because getting the wonder seeds opens up like new gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I cared. So I didn't care about 100%ing, but I cared about like, oh, what like fun thing are they hiding with this wonder seed of this level? And that was enough to make me really seek it out and find it. And it was worth it every time. It was just like pure, unadulterated fun, and I had such a good time with it.
It's the little graphical things like you mentioned, Chris, like stupid things like when you go in a pipe, the hat falls off and they reach back and grab it. Like stupid little things like that really just made it that much better. When you're the elephant, you have to like squeeze into the pipe, that type of thing. Graphically, that was what made it great. But yeah, like I agree with you, Sean, as far as having the most fun playing a 2D Mario, because you just didn't know what was going to come next. And when you found that wonder seed, you're like, okay, is the screen going to start tripping out? Am I going to turn into this different enemy? What am I going to have to do to get through this?
Yeah.
And then to your point, Sean, about wanting to complete it, the fact that your carrot at the end of the stick for getting all the wonder seeds wasn't just like, hey, you did it, congratulations. It was, hey, do you want to play another level and experience more of this? Here you go. Keep getting the wonder seeds.
Yes, please.
It was yes, I would like to continue this. You're right. It's fantastic in so many ways, and it's got replayability, I think. And I was hooked from the moment Piranha Plants on Parade started, because when the Piranha Plants started singing, I'm like, yep, let's do this. I'm all in.
Yeah. Some people thought the voices were annoying. We turned them into Spanish. We thought it was funny. So now we can see what they're saying in English, but we walk past them and they're like, ay, que lástima. We're like, oh shit, like he's upside down. What's happening? And to your point, like it's fun for all the reasons you've mentioned, but also there's challenge in this game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There is.
Yep.
Some of it's optional, just kind of like what we talked about with Odyssey, where it's like you don't have to get every moon in Odyssey. Well, the same thing here. You don't have to get every wonder seed. You don't have to get all the purple coins, all this, that. But there's just some straight up challenging levels. Some of the badge specific ones in particular stand out. But then again, it's also easy if you want it to be. If you want to bring Yoshi, if you want to bring Nabbit because you've got kids, because you've got people that just aren't as good at games, you can go that route too, because the levels work no matter what.
Yeah, and it's balanced. You don't get all the power-ups if you're Yoshi, but you don't take damage. So yeah, if you want to bring your kids and if they don't care, that's great. I like the variety. Like you said, Dave, there's stealth sequences when you get the Wonder Seeds. There is very disorienting at first, but I loved it. You all of a sudden go in a top-down.
Yep.
And you're just kind of moving like isometric. Really cool stuff. I got all the Wonder Seeds. I did not get all the purple coins, I will admit, but I got all the Wonder Seeds just to see like what new mechanics are they going to throw at me.
I to the kids' point, I can attest to that, anecdotally, because it was very much easier to just play the game running through. And like my youngest son, James, who's 4, he can play this. Yeah, he's not good at it. He's not going to beat levels on his own, but he can absolutely play it with me as Yoshi and just run through the level. And then when you add in the fact that when you die, you can become a ghost and you have 5 seconds to get touched and come back and not lose a life and have to start the level over, well, now we're just all set as far as having kids play it. You can make that an option if you want to make the game harder to not have that, but it's a great addition to the game.
And I think the best decision they made overall in a game where they made a ton of them was eliminating what we used to call like the death bounce, where if you're jumping and somebody's over your head, you give them a boost and you plummet down below. Now you don't interact with each other in that way.
No collision.
But people thought, well, then it's going to be way too easy. And the truth is, it's easier just because you can rely more on just being able to platform as you need to. But there's still plenty of ways you can fuck with each other. Taking power-ups that other people were expecting, hitting certain switches, certain blocks, activating bridges. It's pretty chaotic in 4-player, but in a fun way. And now, because you're not all jumping on each other, you don't have to worry about approaching everything so cautiously. Between that and the fact that Dave mentioned the 5-second thing, so like both of those encourage you. All right, let's run through the level. We're going to be doing different things, trying to get different spots. But now it's not going to be like, all right, there's this long pit. All right, you try and jump it, because if we both go at the same time, you're going to hit me, and neither one of us is going to make it. Right? Like, it just eliminated something that I didn't even realize needed to be eliminated.
Well, Chris, imagine that the one with the wall jumps, you have to go through so fast.
Yeah.
The wall jump level. And if there's collision there, you
You're
couldn't
done.
do it. There's no way.
No.
Oh, I cannot imagine doing the wall jump level multiple players, even without the collisions, because it took me the special level wall jump one where they had the timer. I think that took me at least 25 attempts, at least.
It's a lot. It took me less, but I will tell you why, Dave. I watched.
Thanks, Sean.
I watched. No. Here, seriously. Yeah, had I done it my own, it would have taken me as many attempts as it took you. I watched Chris and Nick and Doug and everyone struggle for like 30 minutes. So it got me like, it's almost like I was playing it with them. So I had a head start. But they were playing 4 people. I was playing by myself. And it looked just like hectic. But I love that. I love that there's challenge in the game. If you want it, that's an excellent game design. It's like you get to choose how challenging you want the game to be. It's amazing.
It's been much publicized that like the original 5 people that worked on the first Super Mario Brothers were all brought in to consult with this game in one way or the other, and I guess maybe that's the whole genesis of this crazy vision. It was like maybe they all just contributed ideas and they went, okay, maybe that's not going to be a core part of this game. And like the elephant's a brand new power-up, you see it all over the place, but that's a cool idea. We'll make that a wonder seat somewhere, or whatever the case was. I don't know the behind the scenes, but you can see this hodgepodge of ideas that somehow all molds together into a package that completely works. It's kind of uncanny.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have been game of the year for me, I don't know, for the last 10 years or something. Like, that's a good enough candidate on its own. It's number 3. And this is kind of akin to 2017, where we had like 3 really, really, really good games. There was just a much heavier like rest of the top 10 too. Number 2 is half cheating, and that's why it can't be number 1. But technically, Phantom Liberty and the 2.0 patch came out this year for Cyberpunk, and as such, it's my number 2. Is there anything it does in particular that's like brand new? I would argue probably not. But boy, we lambasted this game, rightfully so, when it first came out. It was a huge misstep for CD Projekt Red, which is, a studio that had pretty impeccable track record up to this point, and we've documented all the reasons why Cyberpunk failed at launch. But as someone who didn't have expectations for it then, who didn't try to play it then, and only played it right after 2.0 came out, phenomenal game. Loved every minute of it. I'm going to 100% it. I've already spent 70 hours on it. I have like 2 side quests left before I beat the last story quests. So I haven't technically finished it yet, but I've gone through all the Phantom Liberty stuff as well. And I just loved it. I love the skill trees. I love the combat. I love the setting. I don't know what else to say about it. It's really, really good and would have been game of the year 5 or 6 of the last 10 years, if I'm being honest, but not this year.
Yeah, Dave, this is our next recommendation for you. I think we talked about it.
I'm going to play it. No, I'm going to play it.
It's all the stuff that you like because Chris, does it do anything new? Not exactly, but like it's like top of the game for all the stuff.
Yeah.
Well-written side quests that you seek out just because they're interesting. And at this point I have all the money, I have all the levels I could ever need. I just want to see what they're going to do with it. Like there's cool story stuff that you get to experience. And the Phantom Liberty, it's going to be on my list as well. I'll talk about it here and I won't talk about it as much there. There's some really cool quests. There's like a James Bond-esque quest or like True Lies or one of those like sort of spy missions, and it's just the different things you do all in one mission, from the infiltration to the undercover to dialogue tree choices to shootout at the end if you want it. It's so interesting. It's like it's the top of the game, and that's just one mission. So I mean, I loved it. The new stuff that they did with it, the new skill trees, it's like you're playing a brand new game.
Mm-hmm.
It's really awesome. So yeah, Dave, definitely, it's everything you like in a game.
Yep,
I'm pretty confident. And what's nice is if you don't like it, I'll say it's Chris's recommendation, so I don't have to take yet another L.
He'll like it. But
wait.
Yeah,
you've had 2 L's. You've had
but like 2 consecutive L's. It's like been like I'm on a losing streak,
But the things that you didn't like about Returnal, you won't have an issue with here. You can play this game however the hell you want.
Yeah.
You want to go in guns a-blazing all the time? You can do that. Occasionally, it's going to cost you optional rewards in a quest because they're like, well, the client would like you not to murder everybody. And you're like, well,
yeah, I'm like, fuck you.
I would like some things too, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen. But in general, you want to go, guns blazing. You want to go, you can pick what type of weapon you want to specialize in and go up that tree and get further perks for it. You can be nimble. You can be a brute. You can be whatever you want to be. So between that and just the fact that it's kind of like Grand Theft Auto, which you like, except I would argue much better, I don't think there's a reason that Dave wouldn't like this. So we'll be prepared to take a big L if that's not the case, but I don't think there's any doubt he will.
And Chris, to that point, I played through the game. I had a character in mind. I think I've documented this on the show. I had a game-ending bug. Could not progress anymore. I was like, fuck this game. This is obviously back when it was a bug-ridden mess. So I was like, I just got to get back to where I was. So I got the sword and I just hacked there was no stealth. There was no nothing. I ran up to every enemy and just hacked and slashed them away. And it kind of formed my character. And it was a viable way to play the game. And I kind of had fun with it. So I got to dictate, not a lot of stealth. Just go kill everything. And it was fun.
To your point, I think what my favorite part was is that, this awful, corrupt city also shaped my V. Because I started off doing a lot of stealth. And I was doing a lot of non-lethal takedowns. And I was sneaking around, doing objectives, being cool. And as I got stronger, as the world got more and more bitchy, I just started shooting people in the head. Sometimes they were defenseless. Sometimes it was in the middle of a mission, and they're accounting for it. It can be like, this person, there's some really interesting, narrative choices in Phantom Liberty where it's like, well, this person seems pretty bad, but then you find out, this email and this side, conversation, and you go, wow, they had a reason for this. And sometimes I was like, well, yeah, that's some interesting reasons you had. Boom! Yeah. Shoot him in the head.
There was a Dante and Bree was a mission I just fairly recently did, and he walks in and was like, "Oh, interesting to see you here." I just pulled the gun.
And you can do that.
I don't know what it was. I was like, "You're probably just going to give me problems. I don't want to deal with it now. You're fucking dead. If you don't want this, don't walk in to a room in the cyberpunk world in Night City giving me attitude. You should know better."
And 15 years ago, and not just a single out Grand Theft Auto, which is its own phenomenal franchise, but in those type of games 15 years ago, that's a mission fail.
Yeah.
Because you're just not allowed to kill that character. You're supposed to see the scene play out, and then maybe you get a scripted opportunity to do it. Here, it's you can do whatever the hell you want. You can kill him, you can befriend him, if you have certain stats, you might have additional dialogue options. You can play the game however you want, and almost every way you can do it is fun as hell.
Yep.
It's remarkable, and I think it deserves us giving it this much praise because we did, again, rightfully so, slam it on release for all of its shortcomings. It finally realized its potential. It just took 2 years, and it alienated a lot of its most core fans. But a lot of them came back when it deserved it.
Yep.
And this is the great thing about when I'm patient and wait for you guys to tell me what games to play. I don't have to deal with the bullshit now. I can just go in and be like, all right, great, I have a good version. Let's do it.
If there was ever a point where that was more true,
it's right here.
Yeah, it's this is the best example.
You're looking at the guy because he played it early, and now he's come back and he's enjoying it quite a bit. I didn't touch it.
Well, I played mid. To be fair, I played it mid. Well, it had some fixes.
Okay,
so but it was nowhere near it was now, which is it's so polished, especially with those skill trees. It's so good now.
Mm-hmm. So Peter says, I played Cyberpunk at launch and returned it. Might need to come back to it. Absolutely. I mean, if you like that type of game, just do it. I don't even second guess it. And Jason says, Cyberpunk is perhaps the most immersive narrative I've ever experienced. First-person perspective, game-changing. I mean, we talked about the narrative. It is super immersive. It feels like me making choices through V. But yeah, I wanted to switch it to third-person in the beginning. But once I got used to first, I was really happy with it from there on. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Well, and I think, Jason, it was interesting with the new skill trees. When you first played the game, it was somewhat homogenized, your character builds. And now, he tells me about all that, hacking he's doing. And I'm like, oh, that sounds really cool. I just blow everybody away. So I have no hacking. I don't do any, magic. I just take my sword or my gun and just fucking kill everything. So, and that's great. Both are valid. Both are viable. We're having fun with both builds. That's how you know it's a great game.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And number one, the last game we'll talk about extensively on my list, there's still one more that we'll spend some time on because we know we're going to run a little long in this episode, is Baldur's Gate 3. Not that shocking. Probably won the majority of the Game of the Year awards across most of the gaming landscape, so you're not necessarily surprised, especially because you've heard us talk about it before. But what specifically, I mean, we just talked about how much choice you had in Phantom Liberty or just Cyberpunk in general. There's the encounter in the Goblin Camp, and there's been a couple viral videos that have talked about this, but the number of different ways you can approach the Goblin Camp borders on ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's got to be like 35 different routes you can take through that. And then we're not just talking like one choice is a little bit different through it. Like some of them are befriending people or persuading them to be on your side. Some of them are poison. Some of them are manipulative. Some of them are straightforward. Like you just gun everybody down the village. Some of them are sneaky or stealthy. Some of them involve magic. Like there is so much freedom for you to play a character the way you want to. A true role-playing game in the biggest sense of the word, that I almost don't want to ruin some of the choices you can make. And we can talk about it in an overarching sense. We won't leak like Act 3 stuff, but like you've seen the memes, you've seen the companions that are beloved. It's a stark contrast to Starfield where nobody gives a shit about anybody who joins your party. Here, everybody has their favorite character, but everybody kind of likes everyone. Like, yeah, there's a couple people I was like, I don't really care, but there was no point where I was like, oh, this guy again, blah. Like,
yep.
It's just remarkable, and maybe it's a testament to having the time and early access to work out a lot of the kinks. You know, a game that size, again, has had 4 pretty sizable patches since launch, because how could you not with the scope that it tackles? And then you couple it with the D&D framework for all of it. And you don't have to know D&D to do it. It kind of helps a little bit. You'll be familiar with what certain classes do, but like, you can just figure out what skills you like, what classes sound interesting, and go through the game not having any knowledge of D&D whatsoever, which is why Dave should play this eventually. I just think Cyberpunk's a 100% fit, and this is like an 85 to 90%.
Yeah, and the reason why I think it's 85 is it's so daunting. I'm trying to talk to Maisie. I'm like, I think you should play it. And she's like, it's too much. And I'm like, I can kind of see why you feel that way. I thought about this just now, but really they could have released this as a trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And like Act 1 is game 1, and that would have been fine. It's longer than most games. And no one like would have complained. Okay, that ends on a cliffhanger. Same with Act 2. And then Act 3, goddamn, it's almost more than a game. It's crazy that you get to the third act of this game and there's still so many different routes that you can take. It is like, I think Chris mentioned this, it's the closest to playing a tabletop D&D game in video game form that has ever been accomplished before. So that's like somebody who is hesitant to play D&D. Like this is almost like what I would recommend is like a gateway into that. It's like a little bit more structured, but you still get a lot of the choices and a lot of the freedom. You get to play around with a lot of the spells, but in a guided system, so you don't have to flip through the rule books constantly. It's just so good, and that's not even mentioning. I think the story is really good. The characters, which are exceptional, I think the best part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so fun. The
really
combat is really good too.
Really well written, really well voiced. Just so much content, and it's like you almost can't describe how much it's accomplished. It might be the favorite game I've ever played, because now everybody knows we've been doing this for 12 plus years. Like, I love co-op, so I've been playing through it on my own afterwards, but we played this in 4 players, and the fact that it works anywhere close to as good as it does is a marvel.
Yep.
With everything going on, you can watch other people's cutscenes so you never miss out. You can join in with stuff. You get some group decisions, you get some individual stuff, but like, it all just fucking works.
Yep.
And by God, having a game that works is on its own sort of a phenomenon in 2023. But to excel in almost every single way, like, this is easily one of the best games I've ever played.
What's wild to me is like, Dave, I don't know if you did this. I played through multiple playthroughs of Mass Effect just to kind of see like, okay, what is it like if I'm bad? It's the same game, but like different cutscenes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Going through Baldur's Gate again. Yeah, whenever I do it, it's going to be like a fucking different game that I'm playing. Mm-hmm. There's so much unique, separated content. There's characters you're only going to get if you play down one path. It's insane. It is the best game of the year. And it's not really close. Which is damning of some of the other candidates, but yeah, that's just what it is.
It is such a comment on what we can do with games now. Like Chris, you mentioned about with Cyberpunk, how, you know, if you in Grand Theft Auto, if you shot somebody in the head, they wouldn't let you do it because it was an integral to the story, and the game would essentially break if that character were to die. But now they have been able to put so many branching paths and write so many extra things into a game that they can allow something like that to happen, which is kind of crazy. That we are basically writing content that many people will not see because it makes it for a more immersive experience. And I'm all here for it. I'm happy about it. I like open choices in games.
I mean, and there's like a playthrough where you can speak to animals, which I don't know what that is, but I can only imagine what the fuck that opens up. So
we dabbled in it. It does open up some new paths, and there's a couple characters in particular that stand out.
Yep. So you're gonna like it, Dave. It's just maybe you should approach it as like a trilogy and like finish Act 1 and maybe like take a break. It's just so massive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you got through Persona 5, so if you get hooked, and I think you will, I don't think there's going to be any question that you like it and enjoy it. It's just I'm 100% convinced Cyberpunk is a perfect fit for you. This, I'm, like I said, pretty damn sure, but there are a couple things that normally could trip you up.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's a time of life of, sometimes you can do your best, and I'll try to play through it, but I got lucky with the timing on Persona, but we'll see.
Oh, so the key, you know what it is. You know the secret.
Mm-hmm. Start a pandemic.
I was gonna say have another kid, and then
right, yeah.
That when your wife is in the hospital, you get to play all of Baldur's Gate.
I mean, I had the kid, and then the pandemic happened, so I'm not gonna have another
even
kid,
still
so
go for another pandemic and a kid. So next time we hear of a pandemic, immediately knock up your wife. Okay, great.
So we've almost hit the hour mark, so I've taken my allotted
all the way around.
But real quick, Peter said the fact that other giant studios had to come out and say, don't expect this to be the norm speaks volumes. Yeah, that was its own controversy, right? Like we talked about what some of the Starfield developers have done since that game came out, and they're a little meh. Then you had other developers complaining about that because like, well, don't expect this. It's like, well, this can't be the norm. No, but also maybe hold yourself to a higher standard at the same time, and don't say stuff like this because it just reflects poorly on you.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Sean, that's my list.
Yeah. So I'm going to be able to go through this really quick now. I'm usually so prepared, but after I made the list, I got to play Cyberpunk, the expansion. So I'm going to have to fit that in somewhere, and it's going to have to be on the fly. So at the end, Dave, we should probably talk a little bit about my number 15 is Hogwarts Legacy. And my resounding sentiment is it's fine. Honestly, it's number 15 more because like I've only kind of played close to 15 games this year. I really didn't think it was very good.
So here's what I think of this, because this is the last one in comment. I have 3 that I played this year that came out in 2023. 2 that I beat, 1 that I did not. 2 that I beat were Tears of the Kingdom and Mario Wonder, and the one that I haven't beaten yet, still working on it, is Hogwarts Legacy. Hogwarts Legacy is fun. Is it a great game? No. Is it fun to zoom around in a broom? Yeah. Is it fun to cast spells and learn and like take down enemies? The combat is reductive, I think, but you've got quests to do. You're in the Harry Potter world. If you're a Harry Potter fan, I think it works. And so it's fun. It's not a great game, but it's fun.
The problem is it's fun for like 5 hours, and then it starts to become just getting to explore Hogwarts like in a video game. Mm-hmm. A fairly polished Hogwarts, like that's fun. And then the side quests that you mentioned, yeah, they're there, but they're bad. They're boring. They're fetch questy. They're your main character. I know there's a lot of customization involved, but there's such like a blank slate. It's too much. And then when you discover the broom, that adds like a little bit more interest again, because getting to fly around, that's, oh my God, what a revelation of walking everywhere. But then I resented how much they did make me walk when clearly the broom was a mechanic that worked very well. So it's like, fuck you, game, for not respecting my time.
I got damn near stuck in a building once because it wouldn't let me jump on my broom. I'm like, but I can fly right up to that loft and get out of this. Why won't you let me?
Yeah, so some of the mechanics are obtuse too in the puzzles. Like, I got stuck in one because there was a specific thing that keeps the box flying, Dave, but I was using the one that just moves the box but doesn't permanently make it hover.
I know. I did that too.
And it's fucking annoying. And like no one had any advice. And I just had to look it up. I was like, oh, it's because it's the other spell. Now, I did not help myself because I took such long breaks, but still. And then eventually you get a spell where you slam people into the ground, and that's pretty fun. And then, Dave, I hope you know when I got the curse spell, that was constant.
Oh, it was never like my real complaint with this game, honestly, is that I am in a group of people using Imperio, using Crucio, and they don't care. They're like fine with it, whatever. And I'm like, do you understand? They're called unforgivable people.
Your controller screams when you use the torture spell.
I appreciated that so much, how they added that in. Like, I thought it was great to really that you feel the impact of you using the curse spell, except no one gives a shit.
Yeah, it might be the only reason I finished the game is because fucking asshole goblins come up to me and they're like, "Oh, time to put you in the dirt." Before they're done talking, I'm just torturing them.
Oh,
that was fun.
First, torture everybody, and then kill the guy I have control of.
Yeah, exactly.
Hogwarts was the best-selling game of 2023, partly because it came out so early in 2023.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I mean, people enjoyed it. It's a good use of the IP, like you said. Captured the magic for some stretches, at least. Like, again, in some years, it probably would have been a finalist for Game of the Year. Not this year.
No, it barely made my list. Wolong, it's a Souls-like game, and I spent a lot of time on it. It's just really fun. You can pretty much counter or parry everything. So that it's almost more like a fighting game than like a typical Souls game. Although it has the rest of the Souls games trappings. I'm a sucker for Souls games. You'll see this appear again later. So it was good, just not as good as some of the other ones. Octopath 2. No one else played it. I think both of you would like it, but even with that said, it's not super high up on my list.
I'll get to it eventually, but it's a ways down my list. I'll play Witcher 3 before I play that.
Yeah. What are your numbers? What are these?
This is your 13.
This is, it's because I'm adjusting it because I need to put in Cyberpunk. So you're right. You're right.
Because you didn't do them on your movie list, and but then again, I'm only doing it for the video people, so
actually,
maybe I'm not helping.
If you keep doing it, that would be good because my next one is
number 12.
Is Diablo 4. It was, it's fine. It's not great, but it's fun and it's a good, well-running co-op game. And maybe that's more an indictment of like what co-op looks like. I've been waiting for Phasmophobia for fucking ever. And an Office Fire is what has delayed that from actually coming out. But Diablo's fun. At the moments where the story is actually like sort of interesting, it's fun to sling your spells with friends or whatever your class might be. And it
11.
runs well enough. So
11.
Fire Emblem Engaged. I think I liked it a little bit more than Chris and Michaela. And we've talked about already. The thing that elevates it is the gameplay. The story and the character were a step down, but man, the gameplay is fun.
10.
Midnight Suns is cheating because it technically came out at the very, very end of last year.
I guess fair.
It's a huge game. How the fuck was I supposed to finish it last year? It's like XCOM meets a card game meets Marvel. And Dave, it's so stupid because you can invite like Blade and Wolverine to a book club, and they actually like participate. Sure. And it's so fucking stupid. But again, the gameplay just elevates it. You feel like a fucking genius when you pull off some of these combos in the tactical setting. Final Fantasy 16. It's somewhat high up on my list. It's just hard to feel like this wasn't a letdown though. Especially after I thought was a really solid beginning to the game. I liked the storytelling. I liked the really big moments, and then right like in the middle of the game or like the latter third, it slows down so much.
Yeah.
So many problems. There were like plot points that were like, it seemed like you just got rushed. Like somebody gets captured and then they get released like right away. And you're like, well, why did we even do this? When it's all said and done, I didn't like the gameplay very much. I'm just going to say.
RPG.
It's not an RPG, and the action was not very good. It was just a lot of button mashing. There was not a lot of variety to the combos until you get very far into the game. Mm-hmm. And then it was kind of fun. The enemies have way too much HP. It's like there's just like a lot of problems.
Like a lot of sponges, yeah.
Yes.
And you know what? Honestly, the intro was really good.
Yeah.
It was really like that was the demo, and the demo is what sold me on playing. And then I kind of regretted jumping into it so quickly afterwards. But
yeah,
we still need to finish for the channel in case you're wondering. We're gonna get to it.
Yeah, it's good. It's just not great, and I really hope this is the end of this direction. My mom's gonna be mad though because she thinks it's the best game ever made. Now my mom only watches.
Well, she should watch somebody play Cyberpunk then. She'll be even more excited.
Exactly. Spider-Man 2, mechanically, super solid. Like it has perfected this formula, but the formula is just still like kind of swing around town, which is fun for like a few hours. And you're like, okay, this is like all you're sort of doing. The story's good. It's just like all the people's like, this was the best game of the year. I'm like, it's not even barely in the top 10. Like, let's stop. It's a very solid, well-performing game, but it does not do anything new. Lies of P. I'll talk a little bit more about this one, Dave. So this is another Souls-like, and this is like, Dave, Lies of P is like Bloodborne 2. in the sense of like literally it's Bloodborne 2, in the sense of like I don't know how they're allowed to have this be so much like Bloodborne 2 because it's not the same company. But down to the sound effects, it is just like Bloodborne and Dark Souls. The way that your HP presents, the way that your character moves, and not even speaking of all the gameplay and the bosses and the progression. It's all just a From Software game, not made by From Software. How is this allowed? I don't know, but it's really, really good.
It feels like the meme where it's like, cheat off my homework, but don't make it too obvious. And then they made it too obvious. But
they did.
The formula works, by God. So
it does. Dave, does it sound like a game you'll ever want to play?
Let's see, a roguelike and a Souls game.
No, it's just a Souls game. It's not a roguelike.
But
okay, well,
yeah, it's
I like
really
that he's trying to include you, but we know the answer.
I want everyone to know. I just want everyone to know that I absolutely did give the camera a thumbs down, even though you couldn't tell.
Good.
I did one for you.
Okay, so
number 6.
This is a fast one, Mario Wonder. You know what? No, this is where I'm glad I remember. This is where Phantom Liberty comes in. Now it's a little bit lower because I am really only rating Phantom Liberty because I already played Cyberpunk.
Yeah, I cheated on mine, to be clear.
Yeah, it's a really good expansion. It's just fucking awesome, and I think it, even though it's just an expansion, it deserves being this high up on the list because
it could be a standalone game.
It's really solid. Backing up really quick, I was gonna say I wanted to go over my rules, but I didn't. Dead Space, Mario RPG, Metroid. On my list, they didn't qualify because they were remakes that didn't do enough to totally change the game.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, they didn't count. That kind of brings me after Mario Wonder, which is the next game on the list. We already talked about it. The Resident Evil 4 remake, which is from the ground up a rebuilt Resident Evil 4. A lot of different story beats, completely different gameplay. It's still obviously Resident Evil 4, but there's enough unique in it, Dave, to where even though you played it, we've talked about this many times, I still fully recommend it. I think when you get around to it, you're really going to like it because it is different enough and yet still really, really good.
Mm-hmm. No, it probably will be one of those things that is going to make me realize either A, I really loved the game back then and still love it, or maybe I didn't love it as much, but I imagine the way they've done this, again, quality of life improvements, that's where you win in these types of remakes.
Yeah, and it's more consistent with the other remakes that they've done. For example, they've used the same character models. What a world for a Resident Evil fan to be able to have the same character models from game to game.
And it's becoming clearer, especially with the success of Final Fantasy VII's remake, at a certain point, maybe we should just start calling these full-fledged, ground-up things remakes, and then if it's not, call it a remaster.
Exactly.
But the industry has no idea what it wants to do with these.
Yep. Alan Wake 2.
Number 4.
I have that as my number 3.
Well, then maybe
so
maybe the Mario Wonder or the Phantom Liberty thing messed with it. Number 3.
Yeah, okay. Number 3. Alan Wake 2. It's the most unique game I've played in a long time. Baldur's Gate, while excellent, not a lot unique, although there is definitely some. This is shit you've never seen before. So Dave, I say to Dave.
Why me? Always me.
Never me.
Because I feel like Chris, I know, gets it, and I want you to get it. So I'm talking to you, Dave. It is 2 games in one, but they're a lot more connected and cohesive than I just made that sound. And from piecing together a murder mystery to having a scene, and as a writer in this weird dark world, you can actually have an idea and it changes the scene, which means all of the surrounding, all the setting around you also changes. So you'll be in a room and you'll be actually, I had an idea where a cult invades in this room, and the scene reflects that. And it's so cool, and it really takes advantage of the power of next gen because it happens like that. And this is all interwoven with legitimately horror jump scare elements, with really good storytelling, with a musical. Maybe the best part of the game, actually.
Didn't know that I was going to come out of your mouth next.
Yeah.
It feels like it's out of place, but no.
It's actually, Dave, it's my favorite part of the game, and I was so pleased to see that's the case for a lot of people.
A lot of people talk about that, yeah.
It just works in this setting, and it's brilliant. And I think it helps that the song is actually really pretty fucking good, too.
What was the name of the game one more time?
Alan Wake 2. I actually,
yes.
we have so many recommendations for you. This would be on there
I could
because
see it.
it's so good. Anyways, Alan Wake 2, Tears of the Kingdom. It's still my number 2.
You're number 2. So say you're number 1.
Okay. Baldur's Gate 3 is my number 1. For all the shit we talked about, it's incredible. Best game I played in a long time.
And
4
then
years.
We'll spend our last 10-15 minutes on your number 2.
Okay. Tears of the Kingdom.
Tears of the Kingdom 2.
And, so Doug brought this up earlier. Tears of the Kingdom, he had a great time engineering stuff. I thought that was fun. The Ultra Hand, right? That's like the big mechanic.
Yeah.
But it was kind of just the solution for everything. And maybe I'm too old school. Maybe I'm like one of those, I'm like a, boomer Zelda fan or whatever. I miss the curated journey. So dungeons that vary based on the item that you get. And they're very different in themes from dungeon to dungeon. And they feel really unique. And I miss that. And I think what really did not help this game, along with everything I just said, is it's the same fucking map. And I think that bothered me more than anything, because at some point, Dave, I thought, I'm just playing this is just the same game. I'm doing all the same shit again.
I get it. But man, the ability to do so much while still having that Zelda feel to it, the ability to craft this into what you want to make of this experience does lead to a fun experience. And I mean, I get it. I totally get the boomer argument that you're talking about, because I do feel like there is a method in which almost that Zelda could branch off in a way that they've almost branched off before. We go to have that more of curated experience and go back to Zelda. But man, it is having the, I love the open world aspect. I love the fact if I can explore, and just, I spend so much time doing that, as opposed to previous Zelda games where I'm like, okay, it feels very stationary, where I'm like, I'm here, I'm done. It's a great experience, don't get me wrong, but the fact of going out and trying to find places and being compelled to find all the Sky Islands in Tears of the Kingdom has a real value to it, I think. So I can appreciate both for what they are, I guess.
If I were being honest, this would probably be my number 5. If I were trying to look at this strictly from a critical perspective, about recognizing what games were truly excellent this year, even me, the guy who put it in dishonorable mention, would be like, it's an exquisitely made game. You can see the care that went into it. And the qualms with the fact that the overworld is reused, which would have made you think, well, why the hell did this take 6 years? Then you look at the whole, basically, physics in motion system, and you go, oh, that's why this took this long, because they clearly tested the hell out of this. Mm-hmm. And the results show. And in some ways, Ultra Hand is phenomenal. Like, the amount of stuff you can do is super cool. And yet, to Sean's point, it's the cure-all for almost everything. And if it's the answer to everything, then it's the answer to nothing. So for me, why is it in dishonorable mention, and why did I breeze over it before? Because I don't want Zelda to be this. I just don't. Not all of this. We talked in the Breath of the Wild stuff. When I finally got around to playing it and we reviewed it, it was super polarizing for me, because the exploration stuff is awesome. It's one of the best additions to this series, and I'd love to see that continue going forward. But I'm sick and tired of limp dick dungeons. I don't care enough for shrines, because while some of them are fun, in this game in particular, because Ultra Hand just built stuff for everything, at the end of it, it's like, what you can do is so cool and interesting. It's like the Incredible Machine in a Zelda game. But that's not Zelda.
Yep.
I'm sorry. And I know I'm going to sound like the old man shouting at a cloud, but I'm like, that's not Zelda. So if I had to punish this to be one voice that's like, I don't want this anymore, and to be clear, I'm not the only voice. There's a lot of people who are very on the fence about this. I didn't finish it. I got 10 hours in, and I'm like, I don't really like exploring the underworld. I didn't enjoy much of my time in the sky. Now, part of that was the tutorial, which I didn't think was super good outside of the very beginning of it. And that leaves me with an overworld I've already explored.
Exactly. And so I wonder, how much would my pain with the game be mitigated by if it was a totally new land? Probably a bit, to be fair. But again, like, I saved this in my phone. Anuma, the guy, which I'm so sorry, I'm sure I'm saying his name wrong, the developer of Zelda, the lead developer, quoting, it's interesting when I hear people say those things about wanting to return to the old games, because I'm wondering, why do you want to go back to a type of game where you're more limited or more restricted in the types of things or ways you can play? Well, because in some ways that it was what makes for an interesting dungeon when you have like a sandbox that is like, here are the rules, right? Here's what you can do here. Here's what you can't do. Now solve the puzzle. If you were to play a Portal game where anything could be the solution, that's cool, but you're not really playing Portal. You're not doing the puzzles as they were designed. You're not feeling really brilliant, at least in the ways of the puzzle. I'm sure if you make a giant bridge in Zelda, you still feel really smart, but it's just, like you said, the solution for one puzzle sort of became the solution for all the puzzles, and I just got sort of bored, and I missed the variety of experiences that the old Zeldas gave me.
I find this funny that I am notoriously on this show for 606 episodes the least creative person ever. I like to build the Legos out of the box. I build them to the specifications, the instructions, and then I set them on a shelf. Like, that is me. And I found it fascinating that I could solve puzzles in a very different way than my son did. I can solve puzzles in a different way than a YouTube person putting it out there did. I found that the fact that the Ultra Hand was the solution to everything means that they could have a more open-ended puzzle. Now, your counter argument to that, of course, will be, well, that just makes it for lazier puzzle building because you don't have to have a very finely tuned answer to it. You can kind of leave it a little more open-ended and you can almost force your way through some certain things in this,
right,
where you just kind of like stack things on top of each other and okay, hey, it works. All right, great. But even with that, I found the puzzle solving in this with the shrines kind of more fun in some ways because I'm like, okay, I know these certain things that I have to use. And oh, hey, I never really used the stabilizer much. Maybe I need to use it. Oh, wow, it can launch me. That's kind of a cool solution to things. Now I've kind of learned that that's something to use for the future.
I think and that's fair. I just think I would get to a puzzle and be like, well, taking out the Ultra Hand again, gonna meld things together again for the millionth time in this game. I'm doing the same shit. I don't know. I found it very repetitive.
But it depends on what those things you're melding together are, and that's where the differentiation comes.
Yeah.
But I mean, I absolutely get the argument. Like I said, I get both sides of this, and I don't think Zelda's going back because of the phenomenal success that this has had.
No.
But the idea of splitting this into, you want to have a dual timeline? Here you go. Let's really run with this, right?
Yeah, Mikhail says, outside of Ultra Hand, I prefer the abilities on Tears of the Kingdom. Love going through ceilings. I get that point of view. I didn't really love going through ceilings. Maybe it's because of the load times it was disguising sometimes if it was a bigger ceiling you went through. I think what's interesting is that it is also polarizing. And the thing I keep coming back to in my head is, what would I think of this game if it wasn't branded with Zelda? Would I be super impressed by the technical marvel that it is, about how much astounding work they put into the ability to freestyle your solutions to these puzzles and build things and combine things in weird ways, stack weapons on weapons? So that's cool.
Interesting.
I think there's audio again now. You should have video. We're fixing it live.
Audio. Dave, can you hear me?
I can now. I don't know what happened. It just stopped.
We have Chris is fixing it. Dave, the last point I was making is I'm not saying it doesn't deserve to be Game of the Year just because it's not the Zelda that maybe Chris and I prefer. I think, between exploring the same map for a second time and the puzzle being so unique, the Ultra Hand, but also the solution for everything sort of became like repetitive for me.
Yeah.
There's a separate issue of, man, I'm sad we're never going to get the same Zelda, but I'm not going to hold it against this game. I just didn't think on its own merit that it was the game of the year.
I get that. It's funny. I always kind of like the idea of exploring the same map with a new skin on it. So this has actually fulfilled something that I've kind of wanted from sequels in the past. So I actually enjoyed that part of it. I was familiar with it, but now I kind of know where everything is, but there's going to be differences all over now that I've got to explore. Like the chasms, some places, having the underworld. Now I will agree with you. I didn't get to say it earlier. I did not like exploring the underworld. That was a slog when you couldn't see, and then all of a sudden running into a wall. Like, well, I'll just go around this. Well, I'll climb it. Why do I need to do now? Okay, I've literally run into a barrier. Like that was not fun. But the sky, I loved exploring the sky.
Even the final boss, I thought, was better than the first game, but it heavily involves corruption, or whatever they call it in that game. And I'm like, well, I don't know. So you need to kind of be prepared for one specific thing in that encounter, or you're kind of fucked.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was a really good game. It's my number 2.
Yeah.
It's awesome, but I feel like you have to preface what you didn't like about it because so many outlets do have it as their game of the year, and I'm not one of them.
I mean, if I had to rank the 3 games I played this year, really, it would be Wonder, Tears of the Kingdom, and Hogwarts. Those would be my order of the 3. Because Wonder was more enjoyable. Tears of the Kingdom was amazing, and I did enjoy my time with it. And I understand the technical marvel that it is, but I had more fun with Wonder, even though it was a lot shorter. So
yeah,
it goes ahead.
We've talked before, everybody not named Sean doesn't have as much time to game as we used to. And so I really value experiences that I enjoy. And when I wasn't playing Cyberpunk, I was like, man, I can't wait till I get to play Cyberpunk again. Like I had to go to Phoenix for a trip, and I was out of town for a week, and I was like, man, I'm looking forward to when I get back and play Cyberpunk. At no point, even in the time I did spend with Tears of the Kingdom, and I was like, man, I can't wait to play more Tears of the Kingdom. It just didn't happen, and that sucks. I wish I liked it more, and I understand that I'm, in the minority on that, but there is the groundswell of support for past Zelda games, but to everyone's point, I think we're past that now. I think this is the future in some form or another, whether they branch it out. What is there hope for, like 2D Zelda to still capture that feeling? I don't know. We'll see, but it was 2017 to 2023 to get Tears of the Kingdom when it did reuse so much. Again, we know about the physics, that's why. But, are we going to find out what the next Zelda game is in 2029? Am I still going to have my heart captured by the series at that point? And if it doesn't have any of those older elements in it, is that the last straw for me? That's 6 years from now, but I guess we'll find out.
Yep. All right. Well, that's pretty much all I have to say about Zelda. We're waiting to talk about it, and now I feel like so many of the arguments we have against it's kind of what we said on Breath of the Wild already.
Somewhat.
It's just kind of that again, except even less diversity of tools in a way, because your one tool does everything. So we'll see.
I don't know what to make of it, but you can see why. Again, Breath of the Wild was super polarizing, and this one almost is more so for me just because of the things it does well, and I can acknowledge it's a remarkable game, but boy, did I feel lifeless playing it. Some
of the best storytelling in the series, I'll give it.
Yeah, the world's even more full of interesting characters, and the establishments are fun, and it does a lot of things really, really well, and I can see why people would pick it as the game of the year. But in a year where Baldur's Gate 3 happened, I think that's fucking lunacy.
That's
regardless of my own feelings. I'm down on it more than most. I don't understand how you can look at those two games and even think it's close.
I think that's my beef. Is it actually irritates me that I'm like, okay, from a game design perspective, it's amazing. Is that all we're rating games on these days now? We're not taking in all these other factors, frankly, that we've been advocating for a long time. Story matters in games, and all these other elements matter in games, and we're just going to give it to the best engineered. It just seems a little bit backwards to me. But man, Zelda's story is fucking dark in this game. I don't know how much you know about it, Chris?
I know a decent amount.
Holy shit.
It's not fun. That's for sure.
It reminded me of some Steins Gate stuff. Makoto's voice actress, what she had to deal with. on a bigger scale. Yeah.
And this could be its own point for another podcast, so we'll save it for that. But I'll just say it was a little bit frustrating to be like, well, are they going to maybe adventure together? Could you even maybe play as her for a bit? Like, she's got this, like, this is our opportunity to explore that. Nope, she's going to be gated away the whole time. And what happens with her is interesting and cool. But I'm like, at this point, like, I guess we're just never going to be the title character. Just the hell with it.
We've had so many games before where they've switched characters halfway through, where you can play as two separate characters. Why not have playable areas of the past where Zelda has to go figure out what the fuck's going on with his own
Even a section.
Sounds great, doesn't it?
Like what Spider-Man does with Mary Jane. Like, you can do little side things for other characters and give them a chance to feel like they're important. And yet, we're just going to keep her on the sideline again.
Yep.
So, those are our best video games of 2023. Ends on a slightly negative note for Sean's number 2 and what Dave's number 2 and what should be in my top 5 if I'm being really honest. But it's my list and I don't give a shit.
Man, what a great year for games though. Because Tears of the Kingdom was my game of the year for a long time. And I was like, no, nothing's ever going to beat this. I put it in on my number 1 way early in the year. And then Baldur's Gate happened. And I was like, oh, this is next level.
Mm-hmm.
So...
And we'll see. You know, I'm curious, like, we know the industry is struggling in some ways right now. We've already had a swath of layoffs, and we're 15 days into the new year, or 16. So, like, maybe these massive AAA titles aren't even going to be the future anymore. Who the hell knows? So, like, I'm just glad that we're having these experiences while we can, because I don't know what gaming looks like in 10 years. Maybe it's better than ever. Maybe it's starting to die by then because, like, the cost is too prohibitive and the scale is too much for developers. I don't know. But... either way, like, what an awesome year that we had so many titles that were so good and that were beloved by so many people.
Yeah. And then, so next episode, are we doing that preview? Do we know for 2024?
We could, or we could wait, because I don't think it has to be done in January. Or the Tuesday after this will still be in January. So I'm not sure what we're doing next week yet. There's a lot of different things we can do. There's a game show ready. There's that. Nice. There's a Suns cast. There's there's an episode where we just talk about the news or the 3 months of things that have happened. So there's a lot of options, but I don't know what next week is yet. We'll talk off air.
Our Suns cast might be more positive after tonight. I just want to point out to all the faithful listeners out there.
Dave, I don't know anything, so you just warmed my heart.
They were down 14 in the second quarter last.
They were down 22. They were down 22 in the fourth and came back to win by 2 in regulation.
All right, well, there's all the fourth quarter woes taken care of. Never mind, we have nothing to talk about.
Everything's fine.
Yeah, everything's great. But you know what? It's been vastly overdue. Like, no matter what the fourth quarter problems were, it's like we were worse than the Bobcats when they won 9 games bad. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yes.
I also don't love that we were down by 22 to the Kings again. But I'm not going to complain about a win. I'm just saying.
We'll save it for a Suns cast. But anyway, like I said, there's plenty of material, tons of material. So we will see you in the next episode. Thank you, as always, for watching, especially if you came along to chat along the way, because we love incorporating that stuff in the live feed as well. In between episodes, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com or youtube.com/objectionnetwork. I have to go turn the stream off in the room because I didn't plan ahead. So just stay here with them for a minute. Goodbye.
Okay.
Oh my God, Chris, Sean, it's yours. It's my show now. What do we want to do?
No, bitch, it's my show still. I'm in here now.
Damn it.
Well, no, I don't feel any pressure because we've missed our chance.
Man, you were so ready.